It's funny because I became a video guy. The video company was the first company that called once I finally left there. And I wasn't even a video guy at the time. I was really an audio and production manager. But, when it came into later years, having the experience of production managing and running those tours. I mean, running a 3-truck tour is no simple process and it's
Yeah.
not easy. And that is really where, like I said, it catapulted my career. So when I was in my early 30s and late 20s, I was doing things that most people weren't doing until their late 30s, early 40s.
Hello, and thanks for joining me again here on Geese of Gear. And so I appreciate you coming by, of course. I appreciate that you're here. And I also look forward to doing a live podcast again. It's been a couple of weeks. Sarah's been gone. She's been off on tour. And I think she'll probably come in at some point and talk a little bit about the tour and about that experience and what that was like and all of that stuff. And also, her and I are working really hard right now on Dining with Dinosaurs. If you weren't there last year at LDI, hopefully you'll come this year. It's going to be much bigger, much better, much more organized. Last year was just like, hey, let's try this thing. We'll call it Dining with Dinosaurs and bring a bunch of famous LDs and production managers and stuff, and we'll connect them with other people. And so we're doing it again. It's a much bigger event. If you haven't seen announcements from LDI, it's actually on Saturday this year. So it's the day before the show starts. And it is done sort of on it's a whole day that we've put together that's 2 different events. And so the first one is an LDI event, which is called X Live, that I'm very much involved in partnering and creating with both LDI and with Jake Berry. And so we're creating the X Live is basically a little mini full day set of sessions, a conference, whatever you want to call it, for primarily for, I guess, young people coming into the industry, but also for professionals who are already in the industry, just to rub shoulders with some really cool people and to do a few really cool courses. And so we'll have more on that later on the X Live. But the cool thing is there's a short break in between X Live, which goes, I think, till 5 o'clock. And then Dining with Dinosaurs starts at 5:30 and goes till 9. So that's going to be like hors d'oeuvres, drinks, a lot of really cool information changing hands from, the dinosaurs of this industry, people like myself who have been in it for over 30 years and who have stories to share and lessons to bring to whether, again, you're young people or older people, or you just want to stand around and have a drink and bump into lots of really cool people. That is going to be an incredible event. We're also going to be giving away a Golden Dinosaur Award this year to just someone that we've chosen who is an outstanding individual in our industry. Could be a sound person, lighting person, account rep. It could be anyone. And so there's going to be a bunch of voting done within our group to make that happen. So it's going to be a really fun event. And again, it becomes a full day thing starting, I believe, at 9 or 9:30 in the morning with the X Live and ending up at 9 o'clock at night, which I'm guessing will continue on past 9 o'clock at night. So yeah, that's fun. AI, of course, I have a little update. So first, I've been doing a bunch of coaching, which has been really fun. It's free. I've offered it to people within our industry where I will spend 30 minutes on a call with you and just sort of give you some ideas on how to start using AI in your personal or work life. And that has gone really well. I've done a bunch of them and I have nothing to gain from it. It's just mentoring. It's just time that I don't have to give away that I'm giving away because I think it's that important that you start figuring out AI instead of just, I know a lot of people in our industry just don't want it to happen. It's going to happen. It is happening. And there are ways that you can use it where it's not replacing your art or your creativity or whatever. It's augmenting, it's helping you. So you can find that link. I believe it's on LinkedIn. I have a link up there where you can just click on it and book time with me. And so if you go to my LinkedIn, you'll find that. And then secondly on AI is I am in the very late stages of building out a pretty significant business based on AI, backed by AI, enabled by AI. It's called GearShare. It's sort of like the Airbnb version of GearSource. So instead of buying and selling gear, you are either a vendor or a renter. And it's all about cross-renting, sub-renting from company to company. It's entirely B2B. It will be global. We don't get involved in the transaction. It's all about putting the gear into the system, connecting all of that gear globally to a group of people over here who are looking for the gear. And so it's just a very quick, easy, painless, frictionless way of digitizing what is right now happening with a cell phone and a Rolodex. Hey, Bob, you got any of these things? I need 100 for Beyonce this summer. It's working amazingly well. The demos we've done have been extremely well accepted. We'll be doing a webinar in the next couple of weeks. You can reach out to me directly if you want to find out anything about that, but you can also go to gearshare.live and you can sign up for our waiting list, basically, where we're going to be doing a webinar and we're going to be giving people early information. It's planned to launch sometime in either July or August. And so, yeah, very cool. It's pretty exciting. It's been a lot of fun to be a part of. My head is ready to explode with the amount of information I've learned about AI over the past couple of months, well, several months building this thing. And so today's guest, Jordan Goodfellow, is the CEO of GigRent and founder of the Rare Experience as well. With over 20 years of experience in technical direction, video engineering, and live event production, Jordan is known for his problem-solving mindset and hands-on leadership. He built GigRent into a go-to AV subrental partner for high-stakes corporate and entertainment events across the U.S. Jordan's career spans everything from arena tours to Fortune 500 meetings, specializing in screen management, projection mapping, and virtual hybrid event execution. Whether directing a live show or supporting a last-minute rental, Jordan brings unmatched dedication, technical skill, and calm under pressure. Please welcome Jordan Goodfellow. Mr. Jordan Goodfellow, how are you?
I am doing pretty well, sir. How are you today?
I'm pretty okay. I'm in the Canadian Rocky Mountains. It actually snowed on the weekend. It snowed on Saturday, like real snow, like snowflakes this big and
Oh,
stuff.
wow.
It was crazy. I posted it on, I think on my Instagram story or something with, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Because it really did. I mean, my girlfriend and I were like, this is great. We're sitting watching movies with a fireplace going and out the window, these huge snowflakes in June,
That's awesome.
That's Canada.
I love the snow. Sometimes at home, being in Florida, obviously. I'll take the TV and one of the things that bothers me the most about TVs these days is that when they're on the wall, they're just one big black rectangle and there's nothing there.
Yeah.
And so I actually enjoy the fact that some of the companies have started to include painting and things like that. But what I do is I'll go to YouTube and there's my favorite digital image. It was made, I'm sure, by AI or somebody, whatever, but it looks almost flawless. And I'll put that up and it's this big snowy background with
awesome.
a fireplace in the corner
I
and a
love
big
that.
brown couch and everything. And I'll just put it up there for hours and let it go.
Yeah.
And it adds this warmth to the room. And
I agree.
Yes, it's 90 degrees outside.
Yeah. Well, we do the same thing in winter in Florida at our house in Florida, because by then we're missing the fireplace and the mountains and all those things that we have up here in Canada. And so we'll put, I've got an 85-inch television in the living room, and we'll put that same thing, the fireplace. And, if it's late November, early December, we'll have Christmas music playing on it. You can get the YouTube 4-hour videos that have The
I do the live. Actually, they have some
Oh,
live
they have
ones.
live
You can
ones too.
find the ones that are just live, like literally
Yeah.
run 24/7, 365.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
then you turn the TV off, turn it back on, and it's like, boom, there it is again.
yeah, I love
So,
that. I love that. It's funny. I have a nephew who like basically plays Christmas music in June. And he saw my post and he called me. He's like, I'm so jealous. I want that snow too. And he lives up here. He lives in Calgary, but he's just a Christmas junkie,
did
Christmas
it
in June.
did it stick to the ground or did it go away same day?
It went away same day, but I mean, it stuck for a minute. You could
Okay.
kind of find little white spots on the ground, and like my patio furniture had piles of slush on them, basically. But it wasn't warm by any stretch.
Yeah.
It was probably 38, 39 degrees, maybe 40. But, it melted pretty quickly. Yeah, it was
Okay.
gone. But in the mountains, it stuck. Like, so all the mountains around us have snow on top of them again. It was almost all gone, and then now it's like right back there again. So the mountains are all white, like it's,
Now
March
I
or
want to
something.
go. Now I need to go skiing, and I've got to
Yeah.
wait like 6 months or 7 months until I can get
Yeah.
get
You
my
should
boys and I back up there.
you should come skiing with me up here one day. So where I live, there's 5 ski areas very, very close to me. And it's not like ski in, ski out. You got to jump in the car and drive there.
Sure.
But like the closest one is maybe 15 minutes away, 20 minutes
Oh
away,
man,
and there's a bunch of them within an hour.
which one is close to you?
Well, the very closest one is called Norquay. It's right across the street from Banff. I don't know if you've ever been up here, but
I was going to ask how close you live to Banff
right
because
next door.
that's one of the places on my list.
Yeah.
Ultimately, for me though, my goal in the next probably 3 years is to get up to either uh, Mike Wigley's or oh man, I can't remember. Chugach, not Chugach Powder Guides, the other big helicopter skiing outfit up
Oh,
there,
okay. Yeah.
CME, I think, or something like
Yeah.
that.
CME is a big one.
Um, and to go up and do like a 3 day,
Heli ski.
max vert, just ride as long and as hard as possible.
You're
Because
younger
I've
than me
always
because
wanted.
as long and hard as possible for me now is like 2 runs down, down, a lift at Lake Louise or something. And I'm like, okay, I'm done. Let's have a couple beers and go home. You
See,
know?
I still have to keep up with my boys because I've got a 14-year-old and an 11-year-old that are now doing double blacks.
Yeah.
So I've got to stay in shape. We go to Steamboat almost every year
Yeah.
and we'll do the hike to terrain. So like we'll go to the tippy top and then we'll hike another couple hundred yards up
Yeah.
and go
Yeah,
and
see,
ride.
I
And
remember those days. I just haven't done that in a long time.
that's,
Like now for me, again, I go out, I go 2 or 3 hard runs, and I'm like, I know that my legs are basically jello already, and I don't want to, like, I'm at the stage where I'm a really good skier, but
yeah,
just not for very long. So
that's
my
okay.
first run, you'll be going, whoa, this guy knows what he's doing. My second run, you'll be like, sort of. And my third run, I'm like making pizzas, because I can't keep my legs together because they hurt so much. So
You saying where's the lodge? Get me the beer.
pretty
Um,
much, yeah, pretty much. It's just, skiing, and I know you know this, it's a special thing that uses muscles that you don't use on a daily basis. And as we get older, and I'm much older than you, but as we get older, it's just harder to,
yeah,
like, the guys I ski with up here ski 100 days a year. I might
sure.
ski 5, and so it's just not possible to keep up with them. It's just not possible to get in that kind of shape. Even though, like, I bought one of those, the ski trainer things. I bought one in
Yeah.
Florida, and I don't know, I just wasn't motivated to use it, you know?
Was it the one that they advertised back in like the late 90s, early
Yeah.
2000s a
Yeah, the
lot
ski
where it
teams
was
used it.
okay, got it. I always looked at those and was like, oh, that'd be really cool to have, but it was never, I don't know, it just never was a priority. And then where to keep it and
Yeah.
how to, pulling it out and everything
That was
else.
the thing. Like, you either left it in the middle of your bedroom or whatever, or
Yeah,
you put it away and pulled it out. And it's heavy steel and,
sure.
with these big rubber belts on it and stuff. It's not a pretty piece of furniture. And I'll
Okay.
tell you what happened. I had it in my office and I sold my building, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years ago, something like that. Probably 5 or 6 years ago. And when I sold my building, I had nowhere to put it, and I put it up on OfferUp or eBay or something. Nobody, no bites at all, nothing, like not even
Huh.
for $100. And I ended
Wow.
up throwing it in the freaking dumpster. I literally threw it away, and it was like $1,000 unit or whatever,
Yeah.
right?
No, I hate that. I hate throwing stuff like that out because yeah, I mean, it's a very niche product, so it's not like it's something that people are just gonna, be looking for on a regular basis.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
exactly. But they work
bummer.
well. It's just they tell you to, use it for like 45 minutes a day or something. I'm telling you, like, I'm in pretty good shape, but
Yeah.
if I'm on that thing for 5 minutes, I'm ready to die. Like, I am just, my legs are burning, right? And
Okay.
so I don't know who's using it 45 minutes a
Sounds
day,
like
but
sounds like you need to do some more squats there. So, yeah.
I do. I mean, the thing is, again, I'm in pretty good shape. I'm not your average 60-year-old. I think I'm in pretty good shape, but I just, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of
I
work,
get
that
no, I
skiing
I
thing.
get it. I'm
So
I'm working hard to keep up with my boys still because
yeah,
it's something that I want to be able to do even as they get into their college years and things
yeah.
like that. I still
Good
want
for
to be
you.
able to keep
Good for you.
up and
Well, and
say, "All
skiing's
right,
such an
guys."
amazing thing to do as a family too, or
It
with your
Yeah.
kids or whatever. It's an amazing thing to do. My son, again, because we live in Florida, as you know, and our house is way up here in Canada, it was always just a little out of reach. And so we put him in ski lessons because they wouldn't put you in boarding lessons until you
Yeah.
were, I think it was 7 or 8.
Yep.
And so we put him in ski lessons when he was like 4 or 5. And he liked it, but he didn't love it. He was sort of, okay, okay. And as soon as he was able to, he got on a snowboard and he loved that for a
Yeah.
while. But then he broke his wrist racing, and then
Mm,
he rebroke it on his very first crash on a snowboard. And he just hasn't been super motivated to jump back on the snowboard since
yeah.
then. So, so yeah,
I hear
yeah, it
that.
is what it
That's
is.
tough. I mean, that
Yeah,
sucks. My boys aren't super interested in snowboarding. They've been skiers since they were 3 years old. And so for them, it's just, "Hey, Dad, let's go."
yeah.
And so we'll go up, we'll ride, we'll do a private lesson one day out of 3 when we go up so that we can skip all the lines and
Oh,
and
yeah,
do all that.
yeah,
Because we can ride together now. So I
yeah,
don't this is what I've been waiting for like, so when I started when I was touring years ago when my boys were born, obviously, you're gone for months, months at a time.
yeah,
And so I missed so much of their growing up point, but it was always like I would skip skiing when I got home because I didn't want to like leave them on their own when it was the only time I was available to hang out with them. So
right,
there were
yeah,
like 4 or 5 years where I didn't ski at all almost. I maybe skied 1 or 2 days max. And then finally it got to the point where like my oldest Riley, who's 14, turning 15 this year, was actually able to go. And so we would go to Winter Park, which is still probably my favorite mountain.
yeah,
And I'd put him into ski school all day. And then at 3 o'clock he'd be done. And he and I would go out and ride for like an hour and a half and then come home, and we could be home by 6 o'clock, which was fantastic. So it made for a great day. So
that's
that
fun.
really kind of started the process of that,
Yeah,
and trying to balance that. So I was finally able to get back because it was I hate to say an excuse, but it was an excuse to get up on the mountain and go with my son and, do that where I didn't feel like I was a crappy dad for, hey, going skiing while my
yeah,
kids were
I get
at
it.
home with their mom and I just got off the road and, I'd been gone for eight
Yeah,
weeks.
I know
Now
I'm
it's like,
off.
hey, I'm
Yeah,
going skiing.
yeah. Well, so here, the closest place, the one that's right next to Banff, it's called Mount Norquay. And so my girlfriend doesn't ski. She won't even try it. She has no interest. She's sort of beyond the age where you really want to fall and break your leg and hurt yourself and stuff.
Yeah.
And she's English and she just grew up in England and was never a skier. So occasionally I will just say, hey, I'm going skiing for an hour. And Norquay is a tiny little mountain. It's similar to some of the ones in the Northeast US and
Yeah.
stuff. But it's a tiny little mountain, usually has decent conditions and a couple of decent runs. But I mean, literally you're down in, 2 minutes or something and
Oh,
then
yeah.
back on the lift, going back up again.
Yeah.
But you can buy a 1 hour pass or a 2 hour pass or a three
Oh,
hour
that's
pass.
cool.
So I'll buy a 1 hour pass and literally do 2 or 3 runs real quick, jump back in my car, and I'm home in 15, 20 minutes. So I can literally be gone like 90 minutes and get a few really good runs in, and I'm back for lunch. So,
That's awesome. Man, I wish that that was even something remotely possible sometimes. It would be so
well,
great.
call me up sometime and say, "Hey, Marcel, you got a week in end of November? Let's go skiing." And I've got a place to stay. It's free. I happen to own it, and
Well, it's more about the convenience of like an hour or two, jumping
yeah,
up and just, not having to be an ordeal where you're like, oh my gosh, I got to schlep all this stuff. I got to bring my things. I got to make
yeah,
sure I have it all.
yeah,
We got to find a place to stay. We have,
super easy.
I mean, that was one of the great things before we moved to Florida. Was in Denver. I could be at the base of Winter Park in 75 minutes.
This episode is brought to you by Mainlight, your go-to dry hire rental provider, bringing you the latest in lighting and stage equipment, from moving lights and control consoles to truss, LEDs, and rugged IP65 rated fixtures built for outdoor venues. Mainlight have everything you need to make your production shine. Whether it be a small theater venue, an outdoor stadium event, or a TV production set, Mainlight is the partner you trust with the gear you want. In addition to rentals, Mainlight offer new equipment sales from all of your favorite brands, as well as used sales on equipment pulled directly from their rental inventory. All used equipment is meticulously maintained and backed by a 60-day depot warranty, ensuring you can have confidence in every purchase. With 4 strategically located facilities in Teterboro, New Jersey, Wilmington, Delaware, Nashville, Tennessee, and Las Vegas, you get the reach of a national company with the personalized service of a local provider. Visit mainlight.com today to explore their rental options and even request a direct quote through their easy-to-use online ordering platform. I didn't realize you moved from Denver. So is that where you grew up?
No, I've lived a lot of places. So I grew up in Rochester, New York originally.
Okay.
Born and raised, lived right in Rochester, went to high school, graduated high school. I mean, left as fast as humanly possible.
Yeah.
Went and moved to Texas for 7 years, lived in Texas, working for a religious nonprofit that was down there, which is where I got into the AV and rock and roll touring world.
Right.
And then in '07, over the span of like 2.5 to 3 weeks, I got married, I quit my job, and I moved to Nashville, all within like that same 3-week time period.
Jeez.
And so, I had a new wife, I had no job, I had a new town that neither of us really knew anybody. The only thing I knew was that when I moved, I was like, well, Bandit Lights has offered me a job 3 different times. If nobody else will hire me, I'll go work at Bandit Lights,
Yeah.
you know? And so that kind of started the whole like moving out of the nonprofit Christian, music world, I guess, into rock and roll touring. And then, my wife got a job in Nashville. We were only in Nashville for a year. And I'd always wanted to live in Denver. And so we were like, hey, let's just move and live somewhere else. Cause she was sick and tired of Nashville. Nashville's a party town, or was at least, this is 18 years ago. And it just wasn't for us. We weren't party people. We were like, hey, let's get outdoors. Let's go hiking. Let's go enjoy the weather. Let's go do those things. And you can do that in Nashville, but it's, the perception, I think, was that it was harder. And so we moved to Denver and lived in Denver for 14 years. And then 2021, we moved to Orlando because we needed a change. We were feeling a little, just from the business and COVID and everything, we were feeling everything just seemed stale. Like we weren't making the progress we needed to make. We weren't making the pivots that we needed to make. And we were comfortable. And, in this life, when you get comfortable, you start to not slide backwards, but sometimes you start to coast.
Yeah.
And with all the goals and everything that I wanted to see happen in my life, my family's life, and everything else, coasting was not an option.
Yeah.
And so we just decided to throw it up in the air and be like, let's move to Florida. And so we
Wow.
sold our house and bought a new one. Actually, we bought a house sight unseen. We literally did a FaceTime video with our realtor and made an offer on the spot. And they didn't even, like, we made the offer an hour before the open house. They accepted the offer, canceled the open house, and boom, we were getting
That's
ready
insane.
to move.
That's wild.
Um,
So let
and
me
so the
back
first,
up a bit. So
yeah, go ahead.
you're in Dallas, I think you said, and
Outside, Tyler, call it Tyler, Texas. So East Texas, heat,
yeah.
crazies, humidity,
So
just
how'd you get
baking.
into the how'd you get it? You said you were working for a nonprofit. I think it was it a
Yep,
church or
it
something?
was a group called Teen Mania. It was a Christian, if in that case it was like an internship.
Okay.
And I actually went there to join the band because I wanted to be. I was a drummer at the time, so I wanted to play in the band, and I was like, oh, that's what I want to do. And they convinced me to do 1 year on the campus versus touring because originally I wanted to go and just go out on tour and join the band and do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so while I was on the campus, there were a lot more drummers than one or two. So, there were all these groups that they were putting together and hadn't really clicked with anybody or anything. And I ended up in the sound booth one day, October, I think, of 1999, and was started asking questions. There was an old DDA Q2 up in the sound booth, and then they had an old compact computer running PowerPoint and an ETC something. I don't even remember what it was, like big white 48 faders and everything else. And I just
Like
started
an
asking
expression
questions.
or something.
Yeah, I think it was an expression. Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. And
Hmm.
and I just started asking questions. I was like, hey, what does this do? What does that do? What is And so the guy, Jonathan Pelkey, who was kind of the head guy at the time, started answering questions. And then after a couple minutes, he was like, hey, do you just want to like start doing sessions and learning how to do this stuff? And I was like, sure, why not? So it actually kind of things came full circle because one of the guys that actually works for me now, 25 years later, who was the best man at my wedding, who became one of my best friends, all that stuff, he now works here at GigRent. He taught me how to run PowerPoint on
Oh
that
wow.
old
That's
compact
crazy.
computer 25 years ago. In this we were in a big auditorium, like 1,000-seat auditorium. And so that's where I started to learn all of this stuff over that year was just, trial and error. I
Yeah.
had no idea how to mix. I had no idea like, EQ, how to use it, what to do with it.
That
And
is
it
one of
was
the
just,
things I love about this industry, though, is those sort of lifetime relationships. Like, you started your industry back then in Texas, and here we are, whatever, 30 years later or 25 years
yep,
later or whatever it is, and that guy works with you in gig rent.
yep.
That's so
That's
cool.
It is wild. And he and I spent time on the road together. I was production manager for a while. It's like we went through that whole thing. So I ended up on the road the next year, touring, and I was actually an audio guy. So I was stage patch monitor guy, and working with some of the working and learning, PM. I think we were running PM 3000s and Century, Century consoles. I don't even remember what it was, but really learning how to properly mix monitors, how to, do an EQ. It's like, we got a Clark Technic 31 band, and this is in 2000. And that was like, oh my gosh, it hung the moon
That's
kind of thing.
hilarious. So,
Um,
but when you started with Teen Mania, did you had no audio experience or knowledge or
Zero.
training or nothing?
I'd been playing drums in the church band for 5 years.
Hmm.
So I literally spent any time that I was doing anything behind the drum kit. And
So you
that's
knew
where
what
it was. So
sound was because
sure.
you're on
Oh yeah.
stage, you're in a band,
Yeah.
you understand the concept of doing sound. You've looked at the consoles before, you've probably touched a fader or something, but you didn't really know anything about it. And now all of a
Yeah.
sudden you're in that gig.
Yeah, I think I tried, like I tried to figure some things out on my own once or twice, but I was like, I don't know what these buttons do, and I don't know like if I press this or that or what's going to happen, so I just let it alone.
Yeah.
And I just stuck to standing behind with my little hotspot at the drum kit. I'm like, I gotta get some more keys. Can I get,
Yeah, that's funny.
whatever we were doing at the time. And we were actually in a church that was a little more advanced. We had a full monitor console and a full front of house console, so
Sweet.
it wasn't doing dual duty. So it's like every Sunday we had somebody doing monitors, somebody at front of house, and it actually worked out quite well. And of course, this is analog splits, so 5 times the cable, and
Yeah.
XLRs running everywhere, and patch boxes, and so on and so forth. So it was just, it
But
was a great. it
So
was a good
at Teen
experience.
Mania, like, was it obvious that you just wanted to be a sound guy, or did they just go, "Hey, we need somebody in this position. Will you please do
They
it?" Or
they needed somebody and I was
yeah.
interested.
Oh, okay,
I mean,
cool.
it was obvious I was interested. It was super cool. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, number one, you're getting to do something that, so few people actually get to do. I
yeah,
had the proficiency to understand it. He explained EQ and how to use how to use a sweep, how to use the sweep knob on your four band on a channel strip.
yeah,
And it made perfect sense,
yeah.
and it just, all of those things, using, learning how to tighten your pattern, and like, it just came naturally. So
Was it a
I think
paid
he
gig
automatically
or
saw it.
volunteer?
I was paying to be there. It was an internship.
Oh,
So,
really?
oh yeah, we were paying thousands of dollars a year to be there, live on campus, be a part of it, have a job,
Wild.
learn how to do. And that wasn't even my normal job. My normal job was working, making phone calls, and talking to leadership at the group. So, this was a side thing. This was like, any in the evenings, working in the sound booth, doing, little events that they needed, covering shifts when, there was something that happened at night or during the day,
Interesting. Yeah.
pushing faders. For the most part, it was a lot of pushing faders, because I didn't really learn the importance of EQ until I got on the road and I started mixing arenas. And
So,
I was working. Go ahead.
yeah, so you did that for how long though? A couple years?
1 year.
1 year. So
Yep.
at Teen Mania, and then that's when you got married and decided to pick up and
No,
move or
sorry.
go.
Teen Mania was a progress. So I started on their campus, and then I moved to a group called Acquire the Fire, which was their internal touring team. And so
Oh,
they did 25 to 30 shows a year that were weekend conferences, 3 semi-truck tour, running around the country. And so
jeez.
I graduated, I left the first year, moved to the second year, moved onto the bus. So we were traveling on the bus,
Still unpaid.
and still, oh yeah, I was still paying to be there. I mean, it was wild.
That is
Um, and,
wild.
and,
I
and
like that
but here's
system. I want to get
so, but
people
here's
to pay to come work for me, you know?
so here, you know, the long and the short of everything that went on around Acquire the Fire and Teen Mania catapulted my career by about 8 years. So
Wow.
the 10 to whatever $15,000 it cost me for those 2 years to be there far and away paid for itself later on when I came on staff. So the first 2 years were paid. I paid to be there. But then the last 5, I was getting paid.
Okay.
So they then offered me a job. I became a production manager and a truck driver. So I had my Class A license when I was 20 years old, because you can get your Class A at 20 years old in Texas. I was driving interstate, 79. I think our drop deck weighed in at like 78.5, packed with
Jeez.
PA, lighting, everything else, quad stacked, double hung truss on the back. I mean, literally, you open up the doors and it's floor to ceiling. I mean, it was packed front to back. And I was driving that. I was 21 years old. I think my birthday's in February. So I think it was like February 14th or 15th, like 3 or 4 days after my birthday. I was driving interstate, with
Jeez.
$1 million worth of production gear. I'm
Wild.
21 years old.
And you're the
And I'm like,
production manager, double duty.
yeah, well, yeah. And I was learning. So that was my learning year. So I spent that year learning. I mean, I was learning how to production manage. I was learning how to call shows. So stage manage, manage people. We had a team of 30 kids that we would manage on site. The production team itself was about 15, and we had full production. I mean, we're lights, sound, video, um, audio consoles. We brought in a professional A1 and a professional lighting designer to design the show and build it out. But it was run by 18, 19, 20-year olds.
Wow.
And the whole thing, I mean, the stage patch. So I'm 19 years old. I was stage patching, running the deck, doing stage moves, doing rolling risers, doing scenic changes, doing all
Jesus.
those things. And then the next year I came
Immersive
back.
learning is what I would call it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, mixing came back the next year and was mixing front of house. I mean, I was flying Vertec 4889s in 2001, doing, arenas with 10,000, 15, 20,000 people, mix in front of house. I ended up mixing part of one of our stadium shows for 60,000 people in the RCA Dome at
Jeez.
one point in time. I mean, the things
So
that I got to
did that
do.
did that did that outfit, they raised everybody up the same way? Like everyone came in as students and then they worked their way up to be production managers, front of house engineers,
all
etc.?
Almost all of them, yes. Like most of our production managers had been in the internship at one point and either left and gone out and gotten
Right.
more professional experience and then came back, or stayed and climbed the ranks. One of the challenges that I found was that if you stayed, which I did, was that your mindset was incredibly narrow in what was like the right way to do things. And of course, obviously, I've learned way more since then. But to me, this is the way you do it. This is the right way to do it. And
Very
then
rigid, yeah.
when you move out of that, you realize there's 100 ways to do everything that you were doing.
Yeah.
But it's a great way it was a great way to get started. I mean, doing 25 to 30 shows a year, plus pre and post production for the spring and the fall seasons, plus doing, we rented gear out in the summers for like summer camps. So we would take a crew of 5 or 6 guys and go and do summer camps for people and do other things. And so, we really learned how to overcome a
Yeah.
lot of obstacles. I mean, we were working in all the major arenas around the country. So we worked with all the unions. I'm 22 years old talking to union bosses that are 60 running their
Yeah.
crews.
Well, the thing I
And
love too about what you're telling me is just, multiple roles, multiple hats, like just constantly going, okay, I'm a driver. Now I'm a this, now I'm a that. And,
yeah,
I always thought like the best employees in any company, the best CEO started out stocking shelves in the warehouse,
yeah,
and
they,
I've always believed in that. You should learn every job in your company pretty much and then work your way up to management,
man, absolutely.
Elation Lighting presents the Rebel Profile, a powerful high-output LED moving head with dynamic color mixing with high CRI and rugged IP65 protection. Unleash the untamed power of the Rebel Profile with explosive output, uncompromising precision, and audacious projection that shatters conventions, all in a packed 500-watt package. The Rebel Profile delivers scene-wide color mixing, variable CTO, and a 7-position color wheel with high CRI filters and UV options. Elation's Rebel Profile harnesses powerful visuals with rotating and fixed gobos, dual rotating prisms, and high-speed iris. With an IP65 outdoor rating, it enables designers to create captivating experiences in the harshest outdoor conditions. Featuring a customizable logo plate, the Rebel series lets you brand every moment. Bold, distinct, and unmistakably yours. Break free from the status quo.
In fact, video, it's funny because I became a video guy. The video company was the first company that called once I finally left there. And I wasn't even a video guy at the time. I was really an audio and production manager. But, when it came into later years, having the experience of production managing and running those tours. I mean, running a 3-truck tour is no simple process, and
Yeah.
it's not easy. And that is really where, like I said, it catapulted my career. So when I was in my early 30s and late 20s, I was doing things that most people weren't doing until their late 30s, early 40s.
Yeah.
And so, I was doing and having opportunities handed to me on a plate. Like when I first got into corporate AV back in 2012, I got a call from a guy that I met. I'd been out with Journey at the time. I met a gentleman named Mark Herring, who was a technical director in the corporate world during the Kia dealers meeting in Vegas. I'd met him. He was impressed with the questions I was asking. He was, all those things. And so he randomly called me up one day and was like, hey, man, do you want to come out and TD the entertainment for me on this big Aramark job I'm doing? I was like, sure, why not? So I had literally never been a technical director ever in my life. I'd done some corporate work back when I had worked for a company in 2008 in Denver when I first moved to Denver for a year. Worst job I ever had, by the way. And I'd learned corporate somewhat there, but then a number of years of touring, and I really hadn't touched it since then. But because I had this production manager experience at Team Mania, I could say, listen, I know what it is to manage these things.
Right.
It automatically spoke to my capability and capacity. And so I just dove in, and being a quick learner, being able to quickly understand the needs of of, in that case, my client customer, Mark, and his customer, like just took it on and quickly became Mark's first phone call for a
That's
technical
amazing.
director when he didn't have it.
You know, one of my favorite things about so many people who come on my podcast and just friends of mine in general is the whole attitude about, you know, say yes and figure it out.
Yep.
You know, so when somebody comes to you, because the problem is when you say no to something, generally mentally they check you off their list. You know, I
Yeah.
won't go to Jordan anymore because he didn't say yes, you know. And so just by saying yes, now obviously safety concerns aside, you know, like if you just don't know how to rig, you know, a
Yeah.
system or whatever, don't say yes to, okay, I'll climb up and rig it. But as far as everything else, like just saying yes, figuring it out, learning the best you can from the people who do it, and knowing how to do everything on a show, I think is a superpower. I really
It
do.
is. If the biggest thing that I have benefited from with having a general knowledge and understanding of every part and aspect of a job, and I guess this is, I know when people are pulling my leg, and I know when they're not being truthful. And
Absolutely.
so, but the great part is that they don't know that you know. They don't know that you understand how the media server works,
Yeah.
or how that lighting console works, or how that piece of equipment runs, or
Yeah.
how, you know, the video playback system works, or how the audio console works, or like they don't know that you know that. And so when they're trying to tell you, like, one of the things I've learned over the years is that most of the time, and this may sound really, really mean, if an operator doesn't know what they're doing, they blame it on the gear. And they're going to say the gear doesn't work and it's not possible. You know, the equipment isn't up to snuff, or it's not, you know, it's not the right gear, or it's broken, to cover for the fact that they got themselves in over their head and they didn't want to admit it. They didn't want to ask for help.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to be kind here because
No, but
I
it's
see
the
it.
same in everything. You know, it's like my son's a racing driver, so everything's always a racing analogy. But, you know, like people will say, you know, I ran out of horsepower. I ran out of, you know, I didn't have enough brake. I didn't have enough pedal. I didn't have enough of this. And I ran out of this. No, you ran out of talent is what happened. You ran out of talent. You bumped into the ceiling of your talent capacity at that point.
Well, so I would argue that, and I would say you ran out of training, because we never fall. We always fall to our highest level of preparedness, our highest level of training when we're at that point. So that just means you may have great talent, but maybe it's just another step of training. Maybe it's another class. Maybe it's another sit down with someone who knows what they're doing. Maybe it's just like you could be one hour away from knowing how to do it. It's just the willingness to make the sacrifice of that time, because your craft is that important to you. And there are a lot of people that don't want to take that time to sit down with the manual or look at the piece of equipment. And you know what, maybe when you know you're walking into a show with a piece of gear you haven't used, you find 5 YouTube videos and pull up the manual to look at it. Or, you know, because I've said yes to jobs where I've never touched that Blackmagic switcher, or I've never used that Ross Carbonite, or I've never, you know, touched that audio console, whatever, the, you know, the Allen Heath or the, you know, the Yamaha or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So great. All right, I know that I can figure it out. I know the concept is there, but let's just spend an hour. I mean, how much time really is an hour in the grand scheme of things when you just
know what, you just bordered on one of my favorite quotes, which is you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems or processes or training. You know, you can add in any of those words in there, but for me and my company, normally it's our systems that we've created fail us. You know, it's not necessarily even the people, or it's the people not following the systems, or the people not being well enough trained. But generally, you don't rise to your goals; you fall to your systems or processes. And again, add in knowledge or training to that as well. So, you know, I want to go back to sort of your career path a little bit here. But so, you know, 7 years in that Teen Mania, is that what it was?
Yep.
So 2 years paid and 5 years getting paid. 2 years paying, 5 years getting paid.
Yep.
And I'm guessing when you were getting paid, you were getting paid at the very bottom end of any kind of scale that anyone would even look at.
I still have one of my first paychecks I ever got when I started getting paid from them. and it was a 2-week paycheck. And I think it was for like $600
Yeah.
or something like that. I mean, now they were covering all my traveling costs, and, I was a driver. So all my food, and I mean, literally for 35 weeks out of the year, I paid $0 out of
To
pocket. I
live.
mean, it
Yeah.
cost me nothing. I had a
Yeah.
semi that I stayed in. They put us in hotels every night when we were doing shows. Like, you didn't have to stay in the truck. I mean, it sounds, I think it was like, I think the salary was like 16,000. It was basically minimum wage at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
And, and, I could maintain the apartment I shared with 4 other guys. I mean, I'm 21 years old. Like,
Yeah.
I'm young, like, just, we all chipped in and shared an apartment or a house or whatever it was. And we all made it work.
Yeah.
But it was for the experience, and then for what we believed was the right thing for each of us to do as we were growing up.
Well, and for you, it was a massive jump from paying to be there to at least now I'm getting paid and my room and board is basically covered while I'm out on the road, and it's a great thing. So, now you got to explain to me this little 3-week period where you decide to get married and quit your job and move to Nashville.
Okay, we were already married, so we had scheduled getting married. We got married July 28th. 2007.
Yeah.
So we had already scheduled that, but I was debating. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like, I was coming into the summer, and I didn't know, like, did I want to stay at Teen Mania and acquire the fire? Did I want to leave? Like, how did I want to do? So right before we went to get married, I basically said, hey, I just want to let you know, like, this is my last 2 weeks. I'm going to be done at the beginning of August. I'm going to get married, and then we're going to take a couple weeks off, and then I'm going to move to Nashville. And they said, great, if you can just come back for graduation, which was like August 7th, I think, to run that for them and make sure that went smoothly, then great. And there was another production manager that was already there, ready to go, that had been working with me for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And he was,
they had a good
take
bench.
over.
It sounds like,
there was a very good bench. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I just knew it was the right thing to do. I knew it was time. I was getting married, but I also didn't know. I got married without knowing, like, what was I going to do?
Yeah.
This is what I had known for 7 years, was literally working 60, 80 hours a week, doing shows, driving, running nonstop, basically having one day off a week. And that day off was like, do laundry, play some video games, hang out with my buddies. Like, that was it. And other than that, we were in the office, we were flying, traveling. I was executive platinum on American Airlines at that point in time already. We were doing, like, it was nonstop.
Yeah.
And so everything came to a screeching halt, and I got married. I had no idea what to do. Like, I'm like, holy crap, what? Like, I got some money in the bank, so we're okay for a little bit. But I guess I'm moving to Nashville because I don't, like, that's where music is. That's where touring is. That's all I know.
That was the whole decision, was basically that's where all the
it was all centered around the fact that Bandit Lights had offered me a job 3 times. And if I could get nothing else, I can turn around and go to Bandit, and I know they'll hire me.
How was Bandit Lights accessing you to offer you a job? So were you just bumping into their people on these shows?
No,
that you were doing?
We were renting equipment from them. So one of my good friends, a gentleman named Sean Warlow, had been a production manager for Teen Mania and Acquire the Fire. And then he went and was working for Bandit Lights on a freelance basis. And so he was running out doing, touring and other things out of Nashville, and him and his wife lived in Nashville as well.
Right.
And he brought Bandit Lights in as the rental company when we were doing 2 shows a weekend, because we had one system, but we didn't have enough gear to do 2. So we would rent for 5 to 8 shows a year. And that's how we met Bandit Lights, because Bandit Lights was, they could get us a full lighting system, and we could rent it and get a technician that, would come out and work and manage and do all that stuff. So I had met them over the last 3 or 4 years, from driving trucks, showing up, picking up the gear, meeting with I was the production manager. So I was handling the money and making sure that they got paid. And, so I was talking to Mike Golden and talking to, Jonathan, I don't remember his last name offhand, but, basically all the guys that worked there, and, getting to know the Nashville time. This is like pre-Big Shop. This is 20 some years ago. So that's how I knew them. And they had called me up a number of times. Hey, we'd love to have you come work for us. We'd love you to do this. We'd love you to do that. And I did end up going to work for them about 6 months later. But I got to Nashville. went and did some scenic work for a guy for a little bit to just try and fill in. And then Nocturne, who at the time, prior to their PRG acquisition, was just Nocturne Productions,
Yeah.
a video company. They called up, and I was like the 8th man on NFL Kickoff in 2007
Oh,
down in
cool.
Indianapolis.
Cool.
And
So
that
now
was my
you're
first
learning video.
Now I'm learning video. So
Good for
I
you.
am. Yeah, so my first crew chief, actually, so funny enough, so my first crew chief, Dave Panzik, also works for me now, which is really
Wow.
funny. He was my first tour. He was my first like real show crew chief. We were doing. Nocturne at the time had one of the only LED floors that people could walk on, which was LED with plexi on it,
Yeah.
you know, and the frame was so tight that you could like run it at an angle, and they put like plexi that was 1.5 inches thick on it. But I remember my first time being under the stage during the show, and it was Kelly Clarkson that was performing. And Dave was like, they're getting ready to start the show. I'm the tech. I'm supposed to be the guy that's going to fix the LED underneath there, which I literally had zero clue what I was doing. And so
That's
we're under there.
hilarious.
And he's like, if this goes wrong, I'm going to call you on the radio. I'm going to tell you it's this line and it's this row, and you pull this and you unplug this and you swap this over and you do that. And I'm like, dude, deer in the headlights. Like
Yeah.
I was
But
like,
on the radio,
holy...
you're like, got it.
Yeah, exactly.
I got it.
And thankfully nothing went down.
Oh my God.
And so I sat under the stage for an hour and a half. I was reading. I actually had a book with me of all things, you know, because this is like, you know,
That's
this is
funny.
pre-iPhone. This is pre-everything. And I'm just sitting there waiting with the splitters, you know. And now, of course, in my mind, I know exactly what I should have done because I spent a number of years touring with Nocturne after that and
Right.
understanding their LED system. But this is back like, you know, this is 9 mil LED, which is at that time was like next gen. I mean, it weighed a ton,
Yeah.
but it did the job. And so now Dave actually runs and manages all of our software development and all the things that we do here at GigRent to help develop better systems for our customers,
That's
which is
awesome.
super cool to see. And he approached me 7 years ago and was like, hey, dude, I want to come work for you. He was working for VER at the time. And so it's so cool, like you said earlier, to see how things just come
Lifelong
around.
relationships.
I mean, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, you know, from there, I did end up going to work for Bandit Lights for about 3 months. In fact, exactly 3 months. I gave them 3 months. I worked for WWE and I was out on the road
with Jason.
and it was, you know, it was a rough situation. WWE was transitioning into the HD world. So they went from standard def to HD in 3 days. Literally, like their last show was on a Wednesday or a Tuesday, which was SmackDown. And then the next Monday, they were straight to Monday Night Raw. And they were going from standard def to HD. And the Bandit had brought me in to run the Hippos at the time, which were a new media server for them. But also I had just spent 2 years working with Versatubes at Teen Mania. So I had a ton of, this is back in the Element Labs Versatube days. So 20 some years ago. And I had a lot of experience. So I had 800 Versatubes on these big ribs that made this giant header that ran from border to border across the, it basically shut down an entire ice arena of pass-through when we put it together until we flew it up because it was so big, and it was 800 plus Versatubes. And so I was managing the Versatubes. I was also supposed to run the Hippo, but it was a media server that I had never seen, never touched, never operated, with, you know, on a console that I'd never touched and never operated. And they had no content for, so I couldn't practice.
Brutal. Yeah.
You know, it was brutal. Somehow, by the sheer grace of God, the first show, Monday Night Raw, was perfect.
Wow.
I have never felt that stressed in my entire life, like to the point where, like, where my entire midsection was like cramped. I don't know if you've ever had that, like where your stomach is like a knot.
Yeah.
I've never experienced it
I call
ever
that
since.
Monday.
I
life.
guess so, but
pretty much Monday. Yeah.
But it was stress like I had never felt before.
Yeah.
And thankfully it worked
good.
out. I mean, again, the show was perfect. It actually went flawlessly, which was incredible enough. And then through a happenstance of stuff, the next day we had a console that failed. We had, There was a mess of things that went on the next day that were beyond people's control. And some things that weren't, like we were programming right up until the show was supposed to start. We were programming in the blind, and that's dangerous, very, very dangerous. And so I was with the guy that was programming, he was doing it, and we accidentally programmed two of the wrestlers incorrectly. We programmed them backwards.
Ooh.
But we couldn't see it because we were in the blind.
Did you change the outcome of who won the world championship that day?
No, not at all, actually. Thankfully,
Did you
I guess they could change.
Yeah.
No, they changed it in post. I still remember who it was too. It was a guy named Kofi Kingston, of all things. Like, I just remember that they basically introduced this guy MVP, and all the graphics for Kofi Kingston came up because it was wrong. It was one of those moments, those moments where, like, in your head, something is wrong, and that what you're about to do is incorrect, but it's labeled the way it's supposed to be, and it's labeled right. But like, my brain knew it was wrong, but I couldn't, like, if I hit the button that said MVP, I couldn't, if I were to tell, oh, well, I hit Kofi Kingston and it was wrong, like, and then I did it wrong that way and I fired the wrong cue.
Yeah.
That's totally different than firing the right cue that had the wrong stuff in it.
Oh.
And if that makes
brutal.
If that
No,
makes
I
sense
get what you're saying.
so,
Yeah.
And in all of this, so we fired the wrong stuff. Obviously, everybody was upset. I get it. Like, it sucks. Like, you feel terrible.
Yeah.
And then they're like, fine, we have to fix it in post. So then what we did was we were able to come back on a commercial break. We basically fire the other cue. They record the same view. This is back in 2007. So, we fired the right one. They recorded the same view with the guy coming out, and then they basically dub it over because it was a recording, it was for Heat. Actually, it wasn't even for SmackDown. It was for, like, their, off-brand, whatever, at the time, 20 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
And so through that, but then after all of that, we realized that we'd been programming so fast that we hadn't had a chance to move the backup over to the backup console because we were programming right up until show started. And so then the console locked up, and we were missing a couple of wrestlers on the backup console. And so it's like, learning to remember
one thing after another. Yeah.
Oh, dude, one thing after
brutal.
another every single time.
So did you get fired?
Actually, I did. Yep.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. So
your first time.
First time.
Yeah.
No, that was the second time. Actually, I had been fired from another company prior to that. That's that's another story.
Yeah.
That firing, the first one, was the best thing that ever happened to me. Yeah. Literally, it is what catalyzed
They usually
me.
are. They usually end up that way. You know what I mean?
Correct. It catalyzed me to start the company that I'm running today. It drove me to treat people right, to do things the way that they need to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And so after all the stuff at WWE that weekend, we were at not WrestleMania. The next week was Royal Rumble at Madison Square Garden. And, during the week, it was actually very cool. So the gentleman, I can't even remember his name at Bandit right now, but he called me on Thursday. And the first words out of his mouth when he called me, he goes, Jordan, I'm sorry. If you never wanted to go back out to WWE again, I would perfectly understand, because we put you in a situation that you could not win and expected you to somehow pull off a miracle. And we did not set you up to win.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, you know what? I said, listen, I committed. I told you 3 months. I will stand by my word and do what I told you I would do. But after 3 months, I'm done. Yeah. And he said, okay, I understand. Thank you for that. And we'll get it figured out. So then we get to Madison Square Garden. This is my first time in MSG, actually. And we get there, and we're going in, and the producer pulls me aside. He basically said, hey, Jordan, we don't think you're the right person to do this, so on and so forth. Whatever. I won't disclose names because I don't want to, whatever. Yeah. I'm not a big fan of this individual.
Anyway. Yeah.
But the funny thing that I find about the whole situation is that after all of that, the new guy they brought in, I trained him how to do his job, taught him how to run the console, taught him how to run the show, taught him how to do everything about it. And then he stuck around for 15 years. Wow. And so to me, in the end, even though, number one, if I had kept that job, I may have never started GigRent and the company I'm running now.
Yeah.
Because it was consistent. It was regular. I'm a very loyal person, and so I stick to things
Yeah.
regularly. So in the end, it was absolutely what needed to happen. And then I look back and I say, you know what? If I had chosen to stay and they had not done that, I would have crushed it, and I would have been doing whatever they asked me to do, and I've been doing it for a long time, and
Well,
I would have been doing
even
great.
from their end, like to me, it just sounds like, sort of middle management guy gets yelled at by top management guy, needs to place the blame on someone and say, top management guy, I've taken care of the problem.
Correct.
You know,
So
he didn't take
what
care
I
of the problem. He
the
blamed
rumor
somebody for the problem and got rid of that
totally
person, right?
here's the thing, like everybody always joked on WWE, if a piece of gear fails, somebody gets fired. Like
Yeah.
that was just kind of the thing, and I'd heard it before, so this
That's
wasn't
a bit
a surprise.
of a brutal culture.
It is,
know?
but guys who have been out there will tell you, like, if a piece of gear fails, it's likely somebody's going to get fired, even if it was. So the console failed. I couldn't fix that. I had like literally it died. I mean, the guy from the console company was there. I don't even remember the name. I don't think the consoles exist anymore. I can't remember at the time, but again, it was an experience, and I learned it, and I stuck it out for the next 3 months. Like I said, and I did all the Versatubes, and I did those things. And after 3 months, I went back to doing rock and roll. I think the next tour. So I did WWE. Oh, and then 9 Inch Nails was after that. So I finished up WWE. I did, Def Leppard, excuse me. Def Leppard, then 9 Inch Nails. So I finished out the spring with Def Leppard, spent a month and a half with them.
With who? With Bandit still, or?
No, with Nocturne. I went back to Nocturne after
Not
this.
back to Nocturne.
So I did Bandit for 3 months,
yeah.
and then went in April of 2008, went to, I take that back. That was the first getting fired from WWE was the first, because I then got fired from the other company next after that. I apologize. I got them mixed up. So Bandit was the first one. Then this one was, then the getting fired from another company called Richter Scale was the other one.
Yeah.
And that was the best thing that ever happened to me. But it was good. I mean, it was really good for me. And like I said, I would have been faithful, and all the other things that I didn't, going to 9 Inch Nails and meeting the people that I did there and working with the guys that I did there, and then Nocturne and all, like, none of that might have happened if I had stayed with WWE and stuck with that job.
I get that.
So
I completely get that. So how long were you at Nocturne the second time then? A couple of years, or?
For about 6. I mean, I was freelance, you're permalance with them. So, I mean, I did Def Leppard, did a couple of one-offs over the summer, then started 9 Inch Nails and did 9 Inch Nails for about 5 or 6 months. In that, we moved to Denver, and then that's when I was lured in by the owner of the company of Richter Scale, and convinced of all those great, amazing things that we were going to do, and then basically got hired and taken advantage of for the next 12 months, 13 months, and worked to the bone. Literally worked more for the local company than I did on tour. Like, my wife, I got done with the first year. My wife wanted me to go back out on tour because I was home 150 days when I was touring, and I was home like 85 days when I was working for the local, like literally in town, 30 minutes from my house, or, in the local area, and was just beat to, death's not the right word. I'm still alive. Obviously I'm here, but just
it was
brutal schedule.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
And then they fired me 3 days before Christmas in 2009. So December 22nd, 2009.
Yeah.
And scared out of my mind, had a new baby on the way, had just bought a house. I mean, literally, everything colliding. But it was the best thing that ever happened. In April of 2010, I started the Rare Experience, which was the first company I started.
Okay. So now you're in Denver.
Correct. I've been in Denver for a year now.
Yeah, you've moved from Nashville to Denver. You're with Richter Scale. You bought a house. And, if I was to go back then and give you advice, I would say maybe you should rent. That'd be one of my first pieces of advice.
Well, we did. We had rented for a year.
Rent. Yeah.
Well, we did. We rented for a whole year to figure out where we wanted to live.
Oh, I see.
And so so I came to work for them in November of 2008. And then, and so we rented for a whole year.
Yeah.
And then in November of 2009, we bought a condo
Oh, I see.
because we were,
I'm just playing
we'd been
anyway.
there for a whole year already,
Yeah.
figured out where we wanted to live, found a great little place.
Yeah.
My wife got pregnant. I was on the floor of LDI when she called me up and told me she was pregnant with our
Oh
first son.
boy. Yeah.
So I'm sitting there like, oh wow, I was not expecting that.
Yeah.
Um,
So
so
what is the rare experience? Or what was it? I think it still exists, doesn't it?
It does. The Rare
Yeah.
Experience is is the holding company. So the Rare Experience is the company that's going to own all of the other companies that I will own.
Oh, I see.
Over
It was
time.
also the
So
first company you started. And when you
it
first
it
started
was
it, what was it?
the original idea was to be a producer technical direction company that would produce and manage events specifically.
Okay.
So it was event based. It was, I was managing some I was working with a guy that was doing like some crusade style events and doing some other, technical direction management type stuff and all within the Christian world. But that was something that I was like, oh, maybe I could do this for a living. Maybe this would be something I'm, because I was good at it. I was good at managing and organizing and taking all that stuff
Yeah.
down and making it happen. So I was like, well, let's give it a shot and see what happens. And so I did a little bit here and there. Most of that for the Rare Experience was spent doing touring, doing rock and roll type stuff, working for any number of groups with that we worked with for Nocturne until 2014. So the end of 2014 was really my last tour that I ever did.
Oh, wow.
And so for that, the next 5 years, basically, most of that was spent with Linkin Park, and working with them, and really became part of the core team there. And then the end of 2014, Jim Digby, my production manager, I remember we were in Manchester, UK. And earlier that year, June of 2014, my wife had said, like, and this is, I'm a very loyal person. I'd been with them for a long time. The money was good. Like everything was like right. It was perfect. I mean, the schedule is where I could do corporate events in between. It wasn't like hardcore touring. We'd go out for 6 to 8 weeks and then we'd come home for 6 to 8 weeks.
What was your role on that tour? What was your title?
I played a couple of different positions. So I started out as projectionist.
Okay.
And then I ended up joining the core team the next year, and I was LED crew chief, crew chief, lead LED, lead projectionist, kind of like a engineer-ish, where I would be. So myself and then my good friend Skip Twitchell, our director, would basically go out on any of the traveling jobs, and it's just the two of us. We'd carry 2 Cadillacs, a video cable, and with that video cable, we had a bunch of cameras, stuff around the systems for a switcher, plug into a smaller system, and then that would travel with us to all the traveling shows. And then the big tours we would carry, full. Did all of the traveled the world. I mean, that was really the time where I had the opportunity to go like all over the world. And that's another part of like catapulting my career forward, doing things. I was in my late 20s, early 30s at that point. And I mean, I was doing stuff that, guys, almost double my age never got to do, never were out doing. And, I would just dive in and help and work with. I mean, Jim Digby was one of my favorite production managers.
He's a great guy. I like Jim.
Oh man, fantastic. And he was great at taking care of the people that worked for him and enabling them to do an excellent job. So it's like, if you jump in and just say, hey, can I help you with that? Can I do this? Can I do that? Working with our stage manager, Ethan Murphy at the time, and all of the other guys on the team, we became an incredibly cohesive group that just got stuff done.
Yeah.
And it was so much fun. We had a great time. I mean, I think I've been to like 60 countries around the world, been able to set my foot on 6 of 7 continents.
That's cool.
With Linkin Park. I mean, it was just a great 4 years. But my wife in June of 2014 was like, kind of hinting at, hey, maybe it's time to look at doing something else. And I kind of cast it aside at the time. I was like, no, this is great. It's awesome, whatever. And then in November of 2014, I was sitting in my hotel room in Manchester, And I don't remember exactly what I was doing, but all of a sudden my brain just lit up and I was like, there's nowhere else for me to go here. Like I literally reached the top of what I could accomplish in at Linkin Park. And it's not a bad thing. Everybody was great at their jobs. Nobody, there was nowhere else to go. It wasn't like I could eventually become the director or do this or like
But
I was at the top.
unless I change
I,
something in my life, I'm going to be doing the exact same
cor-
thing I'm doing
it,
right now 20 years from now.
exactly
And I
correct.
might
And I
lose my wife along the way, or my family,
very
or whatever.
possibly.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
I had tried to like communicate within Nocturne, hey guys, I want to move up. I want to do more. I want to learn more for about 2 years. And it just felt like it was hitting a ceiling and it wasn't going anywhere, partially because I was filling a position that was an absolutely must-have position that they needed people that were reliable, consistent, and could deliver a high quality. And so obviously when I'm there, it's like, duh, Jordan does really well. And so anyhow, from that, I walked into the production office the next day. There had been an opportunity to go out and become the technical director for worldwide boxing or something like that. It was some job that I knew I probably wasn't going to get, but they hadn't told me no yet. So it was still something that was there. So
Yeah.
I essentially used that and was like, hey, listen, I have this opportunity that I'm waiting on to happen. But if I commit to the tour for next year, I can't do this. And I really believe this is the right thing for me to go and pursue. And so Jim, I expected it. Like in my mind, I'm thinking he's going to be pissed off. He's going to be angry. He's going to be, and he looked right at me. He stood up and he goes, man, we love you. We're excited for you. You're welcome back anytime.
That's
And,
awesome.
and just gave me a huge hug. And I was like, wow, that was way easier than I expected it to be.
Yeah.
And so then we did the
That's
Manchester show.
fantastic.
We did a 2 in a row at the O2 in London. Last show, he came up, he gave me a huge hug. He's like, Jordan, I love you, man. You're awesome. Thank you. You're welcome back to tour with us anytime you want to come back.
That's great.
And that was the last touring show, like real touring show I did.
Have you seen them with the girl singer?
I've seen some clips. I have not seen a full show yet.
Yeah.
So
It's weird. It's like,
is it?
well, no, I haven't seen it live either, but I've just seen video and stuff. And I'm not saying they're bad or anything. I just think that it's a weird decision to put her in that position and to put the band in that position. Like whoever made the decision, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying I know more than anybody. They might be
Yeah.
better talent wise now than they were before. I don't know, but it's like, like imagine if Van Halen would have replaced David Lee Roth with, Pat Benatar or something as opposed to Sammy Hagar. And I'm using old names, so I hope you know who these people are.
I know who all of them are. Trust me.
But you know what I'm saying? Like it's a weird choice. It's just a weird decision that I don't know. I was never a massive Linkin Park fan or anything, so I wouldn't care either way. But I just thought, wow, that's an interesting choice, especially given their fan base.
Some of their stuff I've heard sounds good. Yeah. I mean, but I'll have to go see a show. I've thought about taking my boys to see, there's a September 3rd or 4th show in Denver that we might be able to get to. And it gives me an excuse to go to our Denver office anyways.
Yeah.
So
cool.
I've thought about taking them up there because they are big Linkin Park fans. They've actually started listening to the music and they really actually enjoy it.
So what happened after you got off that tour? You didn't get the other gig, the boxing gig?
So I left that tour and then I had one show scheduled in 2015 and that was it. I had one job at the beginning of the year in January. And I was like, my wife and I went up, my parents gave us some points to their Hyatt timeshare up in Aspen. And we used it up there. So like during the mud season when it's super cheap and we went up there for 2 days and we just to talk about what we wanted to do. And at the end of 2014, I had also agreed to take possession of 2 Barco HDX projectors in exchange for somebody who owed me about 30 grand.
Okay.
Which was actually Acquire the Fire at the time. So here's coming back full circle again. Acquire the Fire I had sold them these projectors 3 years earlier. They owed me money and I traded back to them. That would be like the catalyst that started GigRent.
Wow.
And my wife wanted my wife wanted to sell them. She's like, let's sell them and get our money. And I was like, I think I can rent these things out. Let's see what happens. Let's just give it a try. And I had already had a tour lined up for them because Acquire the Fire had been renting these for a tour early, like previously. And so I would just basically took over that rental and I started renting them for a tour.
That's awesome.
And so that was January of 2015. And that was as the Rare experience still. That was just slow, running out of my garage. And then I went from 2 projectors to 4 projectors. I bought 2 more. And then I went from 4 projectors to 8. And then I bought a Spider X20. And then I bought, 4 more projectors. And so like over the time, so
where were you
we went
storing all this stuff though?
Well, it started in my garage. And then I moved to a 10 by 10 storage unit up the street in a little Guardian storage place. And it was the perfect storage place because it had a loading dock. So I could actually bring in trucks to pick stuff up. It wasn't a flat and it was indoors. So I could work indoors. So in Denver in the winter, you definitely don't want to be working out of storage units outside. So it was interior. So I had a 10 by 10 storage unit, and then I got a 10 by 20 or a 25. And then I got 2, and then I got 3, and then I got 4. And so from 2015, so really I got the storage unit in 2016. And so 2016 to 2019, we were in storage units in Westminster, North Denver, Colorado. And then in August of 2019, we moved into our first warehouse, which was actually right around the corner from where we were with the storage units. And it was about 4,200 square feet of space in there in right in Westminster, across the street from Costco, to the point where like if we needed more televisions for a rental, we could literally walk across the street, buy 4, 55s or 65s and roll them across with
for
the Costco
$99 each. Yeah, that's hilarious. And what a great time to invest money in a new shop and probably some inventory and stuff right before COVID.
Yeah. There are pictures of me taking delivery of our first 22K laser projectors on February 8th or 9th of 2020.
Oh no.
Stacks of projectors, pallets of televisions. I mean, I had just bought 42 43-inch Panasonic TVs because we were going to do a huge booth at HIMSS, which was the big medical convention that spring.
Yeah.
And the gear was already on the way to HIMSS, and it canceled while the gear was on the way. I mean, it was like,
brutal.
it was 50 monitors that were all going. I mean, it was a full truckload of gear. But ultimately COVID was the best thing that probably ever happened to the company.
How's that?
So
when did you actually start GigRent? Had it been
started in 2018.
Oh, okay.
So I officially moved it from the Rare experience to GigRent in 2018.
Okay.
Because
so
I was trying to.
Now you're operating as GigRent, and you've got a building in Denver.
And GigRent actually started under a completely different premise. GigRent started under the idea that I wanted to be a way for super freelancers to rent their gear out more than they do when they rent it by themselves.
Yeah.
So, all the guys
concept.
that owned X20s and consoles and things like that, I wanted to basically create a network of people that could rent out their MA2s and their X20s and their E2s and their, all of these things. And then I could take a cut of the action, similar to what you're doing with GearShare.
Yeah.
But I wanted to take a cut of the action, and then you came up with the idea of just paying a subscription fee and staying out of the cut side of things, which is the right way to go.
Yeah.
We'll
see.
And
we'll see. It's yet to be proven, but we'll see.
True. Yeah. I think it's a better idea than trying to take a cut of it. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
Because when you take a cut of it, you're responsible for it.
Yeah. You now have liability.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so through that process, I realized that I was actually pretty good at renting gear and servicing customers. And so I just kept buying gear and buying the things that people wanted. And so now, 8 years later, we've transformed this into a company that has 2 locations. And, with COVID, back to your question with COVID, I was able to get access to money through COVID that I would have taken another 5 years to get access
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
without COVID. And
So you got
so
like an
uh,
EIDM loan or something, right?
EIDL, correct. Yeah, I
EIDL,
got an
right.
EIDL loan, and was able to, number one, I mean, obviously it was to pay off the debts that I had, which we did.
Mm-hmm.
I paid every dollar that was owed from COVID, pre-COVID, even though it might have taken me 2 years to make it happen. We made it happen, and we paid off every dollar.
Yeah.
And then the rest of that money I took and invested it back into the company, bought inventory, hired people, made some mistakes in hiring people, did everything I needed to do, hired too many people, which is
Yeah.
really what ended up happening. And so now we've finally, after a year and a half, really got to the point where we're like staffed correctly.
Yeah.
We were up to like 29 people at one point in time at the
Yeah.
beginning of 2024.
It's
And
tough to
so
know what you don't know.
it,
And a lot of times it's like, oh, I need one of those people to do that. I need one of those people. And then you start to lean down a little bit and realize, well, wait, I just got rid of 3 people and my sales went up.
yeah,
My profits went up or something happened and it wasn't the expected result. I thought if
nope,
I lost people, I was going to lose revenue, but I didn't.
nope.
So, no, I mean, it's
And we're,
similar with me. I have half as much staff as I did pre-COVID, still to
yeah.
this day, and haven't blinked. You know what I mean? So it's kind of a weird
Well,
thing.
I have more staff than I did pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, there were only 7 of us.
Yeah.
But
You're in a different business than I am,
we were
obviously.
also doing 30% of the business we're doing now.
Yeah.
So, we were not doing anything close to what we're doing now.
Yeah.
I mean, I do more business in a half a year than I did in a whole year back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pre-COVID.
Which is awesome.
So obviously there is some, and with 2 locations, that's the other side of it, is that, if we only had 1 location, there probably would only be 12 of us.
So
But there's 18 of us.
when and why did you make that decision to open in Orlando?
I made the decision to open Orlando because I was already here. Because we moved to Orlando without the intention of opening an office. We just knew we needed to move.
From Denver.
And from Denver, correct.
So you've got your office in Denver, but you moved to Orlando.
We did, correct. The original intention was, well, let's move to Orlando or somewhere out there. We originally were actually looking on the East Coast, like way out on the Atlantic coast, Palm Bay, before we looked at Orlando. We ended up in Orlando because we decided to open an office here.
Yeah.
But we were just looking at moving somewhere else to make ourselves uncomfortable, put ourselves in a position where we weren't just, this is great, this is nice, this is, the comfort is the ultimate desire of us as humans.
Yeah.
But when we get comfortable, we get lazy. And when we get lazy, we make mistakes. And when we make mistakes, we look back 5 years later and say, wow, holy crap, what happened?
Yeah.
And so my wife and I were looking to avoid that. And so we made a decision. And, do we regret the decision? I don't think we regret it, but there are things about Colorado that we miss.
Of course.
But we miss the way it was, not the way that it is now. And we don't know what it would be like with us there because we're not there.
Yeah.
And so there's the nostalgia of it. But in reality, we know we made the right decision moving here, and the opportunities and the things that we've been able to do.
But wasn't that hard
people,
though, when your company's there and your company's humming along and it's growing like crazy and all of these great things
it was COVID. So at the time it wasn't. We were in the middle of COVID. This was 2021. We were just figuring out how I'm paying my guys. I cut my salary. One of my other guys voluntarily cut his salary by 90%. So I was paying my guys to make sure that they got paid and they could take care of their families. And we were just trying to figure out what to do next. I mean, that was the thing. It was middle of COVID. It was June of 2021 when we moved. And so, it wasn't until April of 22 that things came roaring back. And then all of a sudden it was like, holy mackerel, what happened?
Yeah.
So through that process, we moved, and then we said, wow, there's a bunch of business down here. People started asking us to do stuff in Orlando, and we were close, and why not? And so I started with storage units again. And so we got, I had 6 or 7 storage units down in Kissimmee. And for about a year-ish, a little less than a year, I was running in and out of storage units again. And we had we were subletting space in Denver from somebody else. And then we came back. And we were here in Orlando and we were doing storage units. And then in April of 2022, I found a space, which is where we are right now. and where we've been for the last 3 years. And it's 10,000 square feet, and it's 15 minutes from the convention center and 15 minutes from all the other hotels.
Nice.
And, we do a lot of work here in Orlando now.
So, did you split your gear in Denver and ship a bunch of it out to Orlando, or did you just add additional inventory, or both?
I split at first, and I regret doing it.
Yeah.
That's actually one of the biggest learning lessons that I learned from this is when you open up an office that is separate from your current office, all of your initial like infrastructure stuff, cable, power, distros, all of the things, all the heavy stuff that sucks to ship, just buy it and put it in the new office because you're going to need it. And we spent so much time shipping stuff back and forth and we need this and we need that and all of that. And did we break even? Who knows?
But it's a great comment though, Jordan. And I'll tell you why. So I've consulted for a lot of groups of companies who have either done roll-ups or just one buying another or whatever. And one of the things, and it comes from actually the very early PRG days, when PRG first started buying companies, Vanco, Bash, Cinema Services in Las Vegas, when they started buying these companies, one of the things that I witnessed, because I was doing a lot of business with them at the time, was that they forgot about infrastructure. And infrastructure became one of the biggest problems. Cases that were not compatible with other cases. Cabling that was done this way in one shop and this way in another shop. Lamping, rituals, gobos, like what's a standard set of gobos for different fixtures, And just all of that infrastructure, even just labeling things, or even, their RFID tags nowadays, things like that. And everyone always forgets it. And so they're like, oh, well, they have ETC fixtures. They have ETC fixtures. Great, they're compatible. And they don't remember all of the stuff that goes around the fixture, right? And so I agree with your sort of hindsight vision of the fact that, if you could do it again, you'd really focus on just buying the infrastructure and not shipping it back and forth for multiple reasons, right?
Correct. And it's tough. And, we're in our business right now, we're fighting. My wife was telling me 2 years ago that we needed to work more on infrastructure. And I was just like, no, let's go. We're doing it. Let's rock and roll.
Does your wife officially work with the company? Because she sounds smart, intuitive.
Oh, she's incredibly smart.
Yeah.
She does. She is officially a part of the company. She works from home.
Yeah.
And she works with us mostly. She's what I call our CXO, our Chief Experience Officer. And so she looks at every part of what we do, whether it's with our customers, clients, employees, vendors, and says, how do we make sure they have the absolute best experience when working with us? And it's all of them. It's not just outward facing. It's also inward.
Yeah.
And so she looks at everything through that lens. And it's when she is, attacking something that's a challenge. She was looking at it 2 years ago. She's like, we've got to set up like an onboarding system. And I'm the shoot first, ask questions later guy. So I'm like, let's go. It's like their first day on the job. They're working here. We're just going it's like, just learn.
That's hilarious.
And now 2 years later, I'm like, wow, like an onboarding system is so incredibly important to help people understand the company, the brand, the how we do things, like what we use, the
You're
systems
talking about
have.
Partner onboarding, not employee onboarding?
No, I'm talking employee onboarding.
Oh, okay.
Like when I was hiring people, I was like, hey, welcome. Your new job is in the warehouse and this is the warehouse manager and have fun. Bye. And like, that was literally like day one.
Yeah.
And realizing that that's not the right way to do it.
Yeah.
And we've fixed that and we are in the process of finishing it right now. But like, it would have made things so much easier 2 years ago if I had listened. So fathom the thought. I didn't listen to my wife's good idea.
As CEOs, it's not our best quality normally listening, because we're so A-type and we're so used to making decisions on the fly and being the ultimate decision. And to be perfectly honest, if I were to work for someone ever again, which God help them, I would prefer a very decisive person over someone who, sort of checks the temperature of the entire room and then makes a very diplomatic decision. I'd rather have somebody just say, here's how we're going to do it. We're going to go forward. And here's, like, okay, let's charge. That's what he
Yeah.
said. Now let's go charge. And
Yep.
I've never been a real advocate of extremely diplomatic decision making or group decision making
Well,
in
I
running
think there's a
businesses.
difference between group decision making and then the person who is ultimately the leader. And I actually just heard, so I was listening to some Simon Sinek stuff earlier today, and he was talking about how Nelson Mandela is basically commonly regarded by everyone in the world as a great leader.
Hmm.
And one of the things that he said was that he took from his father is that his father and him were always the last one to speak, and they would listen to everyone else, and not that they were allowing everyone else to speak into the process per se, but allowing them to express how they viewed the scenario or the situation or the thing that needed to be done,
Yeah.
and then wait all the way till the end and then receive all that information, and then you're able to make a decision and be the last to speak.
Yeah. That makes a
So
lot of
yes, be
sense.
decisive,
Yep.
but having all of the information so you don't, because I sometimes will go with whatever information I have, and just an extra 5 minutes of seeking to understand could set whatever you're working on a completely different
Well,
trajectory.
and exactly. And said another way, like sometimes leaders make the wrong decision, and it's not based on a lack of intelligence, but a lack of information, a lack of
Correct.
data, a lack of information. And so, yes, you ultimately have to pay a huge amount of attention to the
Yes.
information. So you opened the shop in Vegas. You have a
Yep.
shop in Denver. I assume you have
No, Denver and Orlando.
I'm sorry, Vegas. Why did I say Vegas? Orlando, Denver and
Are you
Orlando.
speaking the future, Marcel? Is that what's
Yeah,
going? You're
yeah.
speaking to the
Well, it
future.
seems like
Okay.
the obvious next step,
Yeah, I know.
given the nature of your business and your model and
Yep.
stuff. And, I'm sure you don't want to talk about some of the stuff you've shared with me about sort of your vision of what the model can look like and may look like someday.
You know
But
what, man? Here's what I'll tell you. This is what I'll say about that.
yeah,
I'll share with anybody. I don't care,
yeah,
because ultimately 99% of the people will not do anything with the information.
yeah, that's 100% true, isn't
I
it?
mean, and here's the thing. Right now, it's just an idea.
Yeah,
It could change next week,
yeah.
and it could be something better.
Well, what's funny about that? Like, I do these AI sessions for people, which actually I did one yesterday with someone who connected to me through you,
Oh, nice.
because he saw that you had done it or something. And anyways, like I remember when I first announced it, my girlfriend said, "Why are you doing this? Like, you're so busy, you have no time. You're not getting paid to do it. Why are you doing? And plus, you're informing potential competitors of yourself." And I said, first of all, there's a whole pay it forward aspect
Yeah.
to it. Like I am old enough, I'm of the age where I really am enjoying, mentorship and just helping people wherever and whenever I can and however I can. But secondly, exactly like what you just said, unfortunately, a very high percentage of the people who do this with me, go down this path with me, will probably not do anything with the information.
Yeah.
And that's the sad part, So I plan to follow up with people and say, hey, what are you doing? How are you
It,
using AI,
yeah. It
So,
takes effort.
yeah.
It does. Like, just using the tools. It's not. It's deceptively hard, I
Yeah.
will say.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you're working to do it.
Yeah.
Um,
But go on with
because
what you were saying before, your plan, your idea, as much as you want to say about it.
so I believe that there is a gap in the industry where the majority of the production world, the AV world, the rental world, the production house world, is a group of accidental entrepreneurs that never got into the business to actually like run a business,
I
They
think
got into
you're
the business because
100%
they
right.
wanted to do shows.
You're right,
They
by the
wanted
way.
to
Yeah.
they wanted to mix the sound or direct the show or call the show or manage the job or be on site or travel or,
And a
you
business
know,
accidentally happened
run the
along the
lighting
way.
or whatever. And they were great at it because they loved it and it was so much fun. And then their client comes to them and says, oh, hey, you know what? We got this other job and we're doing this over here. And you did such a great job on this one. Could you go over here and do this one? Or could
Yeah.
you know, like we weren't really happy with the lighting that we got on that last show. Would you mind like providing it for us and making sure we get it? Because you do it right the whole time, like all the time. And so they were like, oh, sure. And then the client's like, well, and we've got 8 of these jobs this year. And so we'll give you all of them. So now they're like, wow, let's buy it. So then they buy it and now they've got a pile of gear. And then they're like, where do I put it? And then they say, let's get a warehouse. And then they realize, uh-oh, now I need a warehouse manager. I need a warehouse guy and I
Yep.
need this location and I need the truck and I need the this and I need the that. And all of the thises and that start to happen. And then now they're running payroll and they're pushing stuff through QuickBooks and they're managing gear and they're handling repairs and they're dealing with equipment and all of the stuff. And then they're saying, crap, my ellipsoidals aren't LED and they're getting pretty old and I think they need to be replaced. So now I've got to look at the new ones and then I've got to find the next thing and I've got to like all of this business stuff when all they wanted to do was mix sound or direct the show or run the lighting console or that was really what they want to do. So they try and get on site as much as humanly possible because that's what they want to do. But then they neglect all of the other important things of running a business. And so I see this opportunity where I can connect those owners that own their gear. They want to own their gear. They want the revenue. I want to support them in getting their gear to market the way they need to without having to own the operations so that we can take a system that we're developing. In fact, my guys are putting the final touches on our warehouse system, our QC system, our sales system, all of the documents right now that will allow us to become incredibly effective and create consistency on all of our locations. Just like you were talking about before with the challenges that PRG faced. It's like, you know, they wrapped cable this way over here and they wrapped cable this way over there. Well, you know, we're creating these consistencies. Here's how the cases are packed. Here's how the cables are wrapped. Here's how they get put in a box. Here's how all of these things happen.
Yeah.
And then expand that in the next couple of years to these accidental entrepreneurs that want a distinguished, excellent system that delivers the same quality every single time without them having to own the building, own the racks, you know, run all the cases in and out, have the guy, you know, manage the guys in the warehouse, make sure their warehouse guy is good, make sure that the job gets done. Because across, let's say 10 companies that are, you know, mid-range companies, $3 to $8 million, you know, they're doing a decent amount of shows every year, but that means they've got 4 or 5 guys in the warehouse. They've got people running these things on a regular basis that have to take care of all of this stuff.
Well, and it's not always in the same location they're in either. Like you might be in Orlando and doing a show in Atlanta or in Dallas or in Vegas or whatever.
Correct.
So
what I'm looking at is creating locations where we can bring like a production hub, if you will. And we basically bring these companies' equipment into one big warehouse and they have their own location. So all of their gear is still there separate. It's still the same. It's still theirs. We're not commingling gear. We're not putting everything into one big box, but they're literally, you know, they have Jim's AV right here. This is the world where Jim's AV lives. And we're agnostic to inventory systems. You have whatever inventory system you want. Excel, Flex, R2, RentalWorks, IntelliVent, doesn't matter to us. You can have all of those parts and pieces. Your cases don't have to look like everybody else's. That's fine.
right.
But what we're going to do is we'll have the internal system that's been created. We'll have the internal operations team that you send in an order to us. You give us the date and time it needs to leave, the pull sheets for the gear, and let us know exactly what it needs to be. And then we'll have an operations team that schedules it, preps it, pulls it, gets it ready to go. Truck shows up and, you know, you can get trucking from us or you can do your own trucking. We don't care. We're agnostic to it. We get the gear on the truck. oh man, these rentals that you needed that you were going to have delivered separately and make sure you coordinate and all these things. You know what? It just so happens GigRent is in-house. It's over here in the corner. We'll pull all the gear at a discounted rate that you get better rates, and then everything comes in on the same truck at the same time. No multiple deliveries, no extra fluff, just one clear, concise
I love
done.
the concept. I loved it when you first told it to me, and it sounds expensive because it's very heavily reliant on a
Yeah.
lot of warehouse space, a lot of and moving parts, people, and systems. Because obviously, like, I don't remember what name you use, but Jose V, when a Jose V order comes in, it's just like you're a warehouse that's attached to Jose V, but you've got to be attached to many different front offices. And so when you go to pull a Jose V order, you got to look at what's their prep methods, what's their this, what's their that. And so your staff have to be trained well enough to know how to do things differently depending on what that company is. Because you're not QCing to your standards, you're QCing to their standards, whatever they are,
Well,
right?
my goal actually is that my standard is even higher than theirs, so everything gets QC'd to our
Right,
standard.
right.
Our prep system, like how cables are wrapped in a case, it's like I want to work with the companies that want this, that want us, like, if they rent from us, they're going to see how everything comes nice and stacked. It's neatly,
Right.
it's all of the SDI are here and all the power cables are here and all of these. So we're looking at what works best for the technicians on site. It's not hey, let's just jam it all into a case and send it out the door.
Well,
We've
the
got
reason I was
Ethernet
saying
and
that, though, that it's to their standards is, let's say Jose V ships in product from their location in Vegas, their location in Denver, and your co-location, I guess would be sort of what it's called. They should all show up looking and feeling exactly the same, like they all came from the same shop. So if your standards are what you're calling higher, they may not call that higher, but if your standards are different than theirs, then obviously that could become problematic. So it should be exactly the same. If they wrap them clockwise, you should wrap them clockwise. If they wrap them, differently or whatever. So, that's just,
yeah, no, I'll have to, I mean, it's a
yeah,
good thought. I'll have to chew on that. I haven't thought about it from that side.
yeah,
In my mind, I was seeing like, the smaller companies don't have multiple locations. They only have one.
yeah,
And so when they're that smaller size company, my goal is to help them decrease their operational cost, but increase my level of work. So if my
right.
guys are at 60% capacity right now, I have 30% capacity that we can add by decreasing all of the operations that
Yeah.
that these other operators need.
Right. You're basically what I would call like disintegrated, not disintegrate, but, deintegrated operations. You're basically separating all of the vertical integration that they've got built in, where it's prepping and pulling and packing and loading a truck, driving the truck, whatever it is. You're removing all of those things from the gear itself. So the gear is sitting in your location. You're going to do all of those things for them, and it's going to arrive at the show the same as it would if it were coming from their shop directly. And,
Correct.
again, I see great value in that, because the direction that most of the industry has gone is doing that with gear, building sub-hire rental inventory and then saying, hey, don't buy your own gear, just rent it from us. Well, this is
Yeah.
saying buy your own gear, we'll hold it for you, and we'll prep it for you to your standards or our standards or whoever's standards, get it to the show site as and when your paperwork says. And so I love the model. I think it's a really, really cool model.
Yeah.
And
Well, and it allows people to maintain more control than trust, like they know they already own this equipment.
Yeah.
I mean, when is there going to be a new advancement in technology on a powered speaker for a breakout?
Yeah.
Let's say.
Yeah.
10 years from now, the JBL PRX that they bought in 2025 is, as long as it's well cared for, it's going to be just as valid in 2035.
Yeah.
So let's make sure that this gear is taken care of, well supported, well QC'd. And
Yeah.
then us as the managed service provider just make sure that it gets delivered on time when
Yeah.
they need it. And then they can do what they want to do best, which is go
I
do
like
the
it.
show,
Yeah.
be on show site, and enjoy
Yeah.
it.
I like the model. I think you're going a great direction with that. And again, I mean, it obviously involves some pretty significant costs, especially in space. And I'm guessing the space is going
And
to have to be a certain way. Um,
yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah,
I like it.
we have some cool ideas. Actually, I talked to James a couple weeks ago about some ideas he had that he threw at me that were pretty
Yeah.
sweet.
Yeah, he's
We'll
got
see
that
what
thing that he's
happens.
been working on, which is just outrageous. And he said he clicked with you on that, and it was like,
Yeah.
whoa, here we go.
Yep.
Basically using some space that
Yep.
is becoming more and more widely available, but not being utilized by anyone for
Correct.
any particular reason. You know,
And and
so
I have to say that, I'm a big proponent of how do we reuse the things that already exist? Like, I
100%.
like buying used equipment. I like utilizing things that people don't need anymore
Yeah.
because I really don't like waste. I don't like to throw things away.
Well, that's
But
my entire existence. So used
uh,
gear, now basically
yeah,
sharing gear through an
cor-
Airbnb
it,
sort of
correct. And I
platform.
know that this flies in the face of the manufacturers in some ways. Even me, I'm a distributor like for manufacturers, but
Yeah.
and it can hurt my bottom line, if you will. But I think that in the long run, when we can utilize the equipment that we have to the fullest extent possible until it has completely outlived its usefulness, within the confines of what is, like using lamp-based projectors nowadays, not that it's a bad thing, but we can save power, we can save energy, and we can shift into something that is going to be more friendly to what we're trying to do from an environment and a sustainable standpoint,
Yeah.
by switching to laser and
Yeah.
other things like that.
Yeah.
But suffice it to say, I mean, we can do great things with the ellipsoidals that are still 20 years old. I mean, you can still
There becomes a
make
point of
things.
diminishing value, because I hear
Yes.
people make that argument. I can still use IntelliBeams, and they do the same thing as that little
Ah,
LED whiz bang thing that you've got over there. Well, I mean, between the parts replacement that gets more and more difficult, between the lamps that are getting harder to find these days, between what it looks like to the client, and also, like, I think the thing that so many people forget is LEDs turn on and off instead of dousing. So the amount of energy isn't just the comparison between a 300-watt lamp and a 1,000-watt lamp. It's this 300-watt lamp is going to run a combined maybe, 90 minutes, 120 minutes in an entire 24-hour period, whereas this discharge lamp is going to run 24 hours in that 24-hour period. So there becomes a point of diminishing value when it comes to some of the really old gear and trying to keep it working. Obviously, there are some places where power is not so much an issue, and where, the cost is the biggest issue. The first
yeah,
cost, purchase cost. Schools, churches tend to be some of those things. Smaller churches, the big churches have unlimited budgets, it seems. But
yeah,
but yeah, no, I agree with you, obviously. Like, I think not even from a green, let's save the planet, let's save the trees standpoint. I just think as an industry, we have to be more efficient for our survival. Like,
yeah,
I just don't think all of the companies that are out there right now, like, I'm already seeing, companies that are sort of $5 million businesses are getting to a point where they're either breaking even or even losing money on a lot of shows these days,
yeah,
because the push from the end clients to drive the prices back down to 2018 or 2019 prices, and just all the things that are going on. And then you've got, obviously, the biggest companies that are struggling right now. They're all having problems paying down their loans, and they're moving from this private equity to this private equity or whatever. um, the companies in the middle seem to be doing really, really well. Like, sort of the 10 to $50 million companies are just killing it
yeah,
right now. So I don't know. I just think, it's the reasonable thing to do. And I know that I'm in a very biased position to say that recycling gear is important, but I've always thought it was important. And, it's funny because I brought GearShare to a good friend of mine who runs a pretty large manufacturing company, and or brand in our industry. And he said, "I don't think I like it." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because you're sort of plugging the holes of inefficiency that we sell a lot of product into right now. And I don't like that. And so I was like, oh, okay, understood. I won't be pitching you. Um, so
here's the deal. This is something I've been fighting for. Adapt or die.
yeah,
We have to learn.
pretty
We have to
much.
learn how to adapt.
Yeah.
There is going to be things. It may not be gear share. It might be something else. But at
Yeah.
some point in time, something is going to upend the apple cart, and it's going to cause us to have to shift. And
Yeah.
if we are unwilling to, like, that's why I moved from Denver to Orlando. It's like, I have to make a shift. I have to make a change. Because if I don't, I'm going to get comfortable. I'm going to get lazy. I'm going to get
I
fat.
love
And
that
then I'm going to get
attitude. I mean, it's a bit crazy, but I love it. Like, I really
it.
love the fact that you're talking about I had to
We
make myself uncomfortable.
we are primed for comfort. It's why I work out 6 days a week, is
Yeah.
because my body is primed for comfort. And if I
Yeah.
don't get up early in the morning and do something to break my brain out of that, oh, I just want to stay in bed mentality,
Yeah.
like, how am I ever,
I agree.
if you're not progressing, you're moving backwards. Like, you never
Completely.
just stay where you are. Like, your
Yeah.
body, if I were to stand here every day, if I wasn't doing something to actively keep my muscle tone and my body where it was, my body would slowly eat itself.
Well, that's human nature. We're decaying. So you can fight the
Correct.
decay by making yourself a bit uncomfortable. And that means, instead of sitting on the couch eating Cheetos and watching Netflix all day, you have to do some other things, and eat
Correct.
different things and move more and all that stuff. I want to ask you
I felt
Oh, go
sorry,
on.
I was just going to say, I said my wife and I watched 2 movies this weekend, one on Friday night, one on Saturday night.
Yeah.
And actually, after watching the movie on Saturday night, I was like, gosh, I feel guilty. I hadn't even watched a movie in weeks,
Yeah.
but I'm like, I've watched 2 movies in 2 nights in a row. I feel guilty. Like, I should be doing something else other than sitting on the couch.
I'm the same
like,
way. It's like
watching a
on
movie.
flights. On flights, I feel guilty if I watch a movie on a flight versus reading something or listening to, one of my audiobooks or something that's going to give me knowledge and give me information. If I'm not doing that, I feel guilty. So I never watch movies on flights.
All right. So I'll give you a little trick. So I've started doing this whenever I travel to get myself, like, to just get a little bit of reading in. Before I do anything, on every single plane I get on, I read 10 pages of whatever book I have in my bag.
Yeah.
So I don't feel like but I want to learn something. I want to create a habit. So literally the first thing I do, I get on the plane, I get seated, and I pull my book out and I'll read. And I
Yeah.
get 10
Good for
pages
you.
in. And then no matter what I do for the rest of the flight, at least I've gotten that part of it done, and I've learned something, and I've put something in, and I've made myself a little uncomfortable. 10 pages, it's a little bit, but like, just that little bit of oomph.
Yeah.
So
I love that. And unfortunately, I'm crazier than you. So, it's more than 10 pages. It's basically from the beginning of the flight till the end of the flight. I'm filling my head with stuff, as opposed to, watching a movie or watching. Sometimes if there's a sporting event on that I want to watch and there's a TV in the seat in front of me or something, I'll watch that. But, other than that, yeah, I don't watch movies on flights. European flights, yes, I might watch a movie, on the way back especially. I might watch a couple movies because I'm trying to stay awake. But so a couple of questions. Like, from your viewpoint, is the bigger challenge in the industry right now gear or people?
I think it's people.
Yeah.
Easily, hands down.
Is it lack of people or quality of people? Or maybe it's a combination. It's a lack of quality people.
And that's hard. Being in the rental business, like I said earlier, when someone doesn't know how to do something, they tend to want to blame it on the gear.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to say it doesn't work, or it can't work, or it doesn't do what we want it to, or whatever the case may be. But I think the biggest problem we have right now is people unwilling to take responsibility for what they are doing. And that's from the front to the back. That's before they come to do whatever job it is they've chosen to do.
Yeah.
But then also when something happens that is either clearly or not clearly their fault, but owning it and taking it on. I think it's the attitude of the people, because I haven't really had trouble finding crew lately when I've needed to, and talking with other people, they're always developing their crew, and there's new crew that have come up since COVID. And so to say that, oh, well, there's a lack of crew and there's not enough people and all this stuff, I think that that's just an excuse. That's a lack of taking responsibility for the fact that there's a little bit of work and effort that goes into finding the right people.
I agree. Yeah.
And so for me, I think it's the attitude of the individuals, not that we don't have enough individuals in it. And I believe that the taking responsibility for our actions then leads us to become better technicians, better people, better colleagues, better friends, just better everything.
So will you hire someone with a better attitude and less knowledge or skills? And
Yes.
and so higher attitude trained
Hands
skills,
down.
which is always
I can train, I can
go-to.
teach anybody to QC a projector, to, work a projector.
Good.
They may not be
I like
the
that.
fastest, they may not be the best at it, but if they want to make it happen, I know they will. And that's attitude. And I can't teach that.
So with an approach where I think, having got to know you a little bit, you care more and you work harder than most companies out there. Do you, or how do you build and maintain that culture as you scale your business?
Well, man, I'm in the middle of all of that right now.
It's the hardest thing in the world, I think.
It is, because people have come to work at GigRent because they like to work with me.
Mm-hmm.
And we will get to a point where not everybody will get to work with Jordan.
Yeah.
And that's hard for me because I like to work with people. I like to pour into people. I like to take the things I've learned and offload as much of it to other people as possible. Because keeping it up here, we are in the information society where everybody knows everything, but everybody's stupid.
It's funny because I remember reading a similar statement from Tony Hsieh, who was the CEO of Zappos. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us, but he talked about that was one of his biggest fears, is continuing to maintain that culture as the company scaled, and he was no longer one-on-one with everyone. He would walk through the hallways and go, who's that person? Who's that person? Who's that person? Like, he didn't know anyone anymore. His company was growing so fast. From day to day,
Correct.
It was always new people.
I'm not at that point yet, but I know that we will be. And so for me, like one of the things that we do is every Monday morning at 11:15, we do a quick 10-minute meeting once a week on Mondays where I just talk to everybody at the company. Everybody gets on a Zoom call. Everything stops. And for 10 minutes, it's very quick. It's not drawn out. It's not a Q&A. It's not a bunch of people talking. It's just, hey, here's where we're at. Here's what's going on. Here's what GigRent is up to, and giving people the 411 on what's going on in the company.
Or
here's the great
911.
things. Well, I hope
hopefully not.
But here's the great things that happened last week. Here's a really good feedback from a client. Here's something that people are working on that I really appreciate. Like, all of these bits, and then maybe a little bit of, hey guys, here's something to think about this month, or here's something to think about this week, or here are the brand pillars, here's the brand guidelines, here are, all of those refreshers to help people understand why I think the way that I do, and then how we can produce the results that I'm looking for within the company.
Yeah.
And then the other side of that is, for me, is picking the right people to lead the teams. And that's where I think has been the hardest thing for me, is finding the right people to lead the way that I want them to lead,
challenging.
the way that I see them leading.
Yeah.
So finding the right people that I know are going to lead with the kindness, the compassion, and the diligence that I want them to portray. And we're getting there. I've had to fire some people. Some people have left. We've gone through, a number of different employees over time, but finding the right leadership team, finding the people that are willing to also push back on me, like I was talking about Dave earlier. Like, Dave is not a yes man to me. Dave is somebody who says, well, what about this? And why aren't we looking at that? And how can we use this to better serve the company and the customers? And he looks at things differently, and he doesn't just say, yeah, that's a great idea, let's do it.
Yeah.
But actually brings like solid information to me and to us as a company. So putting those people around you so that you don't just kind of become your own echo chamber of awesomeness,
Yeah.
you know,
That's hard to do.
is
Again, those are
it,
difficult things. It plays against your
they
ego
are.
and the things you think
And
you should do. But when you look at bigger companies, like you look at Google-sized companies or Facebook-sized companies, if you go to Mark Zuckerberg and say, how many direct reports do you have? Generally, the larger the company, the smaller that number is. And my guess is Zuck has no more than 10 and probably less than 10. He probably has like 6 direct
yeah,
reports. And so, and then it just kind of snowballs out from there, you know?
yeah.
And, but yet I have a company about 1/1 millionth the size of Zuck's company, and I have more direct reports than he does. How does that work out, you know? And so that's one of the things that happens in scaling a business. As you have, I think you said 19 employees, you can't have 19 people all coming
No,
directly to Jordan for things.
no.
It just doesn't
I have
work.
5. I have 5 right now,
That's
really.
healthy. Yeah, that's healthy.
Maybe 6-ish, because I also run our sales team right now, because
Okay.
we don't have a sales manager. So I have 2 guys on the sales team that both report to me, which in theory would be 1, once we get someone that heads up the sales team.
Yeah, yeah. No, and again, I mean, I think that that's just something you have to learn as you scale. And I know you listen to a lot of the same people I listen to out there in the sort of motivational or inspirational world of people putting content out. Just by
Yep.
hearing some of the things you've said, I know that we
And
think similarly. So
And speaking of learning and things like that, I'm actually doing. I used AI to create a 2-week micro learning course of becoming a better manager for me, because I realized that I needed to become a better manager. Like,
oh,
I
that's
am
cool.
not. I can lead people, but actually managing people was something that I never really learned. So I'm going through a 2-week process of like
That's cool.
relearning and refreshing myself on how to be a better manager so that I can take responsibility for that role that I do have to employ right now.
When you're done, maybe you can tell me. You know,
I will.
one of the other things I did.
Absolutely. I mean, the paperwork is right here. I'm looking
That's
at it. It
funny.
wrote the whole thing out. It's just a
That's
quick,
awesome.
like 10, 15 minutes a day.
That's awesome.
And it's, it's 2 weeks. It's not hard. I mean, it's
Yeah.
boom. It's
Yeah.
not,
One of the things I did using, again, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but using a Socratic method is I basically created a document that I've shared with my team on how to deal with me. You know, how,
oh,
like, a new person comes into the company, what am I like? What do I like? What do I dislike immensely? What's the best way to get a point across with me? What's the
huh.
best way to get thrown out of my office? You know, like, basically just a how to react or how to interact, sorry, with me, the CEO of the company. And I'll tell you, you got to have some thick skin, because when you're going back and forth and AI is asking you questions and then coming up with a document that basically says you're a little rough around the edges, you're a bit of an asshole, and people should approach you in this particular way or whatever. You start going, well, wait a second, you can't say that, and you start arguing with the AI, but it's probably exactly right. And I also have a girlfriend who's not afraid of telling me of my faults. And because, believe it or not, I have a few. And it's so helpful. And most of my faults are actually against myself, not against other people. I'm
Yeah.
incredibly hard on myself, and I'm always putting myself down and saying I failed. Like when somebody in my company fails, or when my company does something wrong, and we've done many things, especially since COVID. But when my company has done something wrong or hasn't done something to the level that I expect or want of myself, I blame myself. I say,
Yep.
I'm at the helm. Like, if you failed, I failed you as much as you failed me, and that's usually not the case. And so sometimes, even by saying it, you're just putting yourself in a bad mental state, and I have to be more careful with those things.
Yep. No,
So,
it's absolutely true. I wrote that down. I actually also made a document of when something goes wrong, what does Jordan think about it?
WWJD. What would Jordan do?
It-
That's what that
Essentially,
document should
yes.
be
And I
called.
and I actually have to hand it out to my team, but it's a way for them to look at things and say, okay, how do I assess this in a way that I think Jordan would, so that we can get the outcome he's looking for? Because I always look at things from the client-centered standpoint. What provides the best outcome for them, even if it's at my own detriment sometimes. Because I believe that their outcome is the most important, what they're trying to create. And sometimes people will say, oh, well, that's not the right way to do things. But I mean, yeah,
I
that's the way
agree
I
with
think.
you. I agree with you completely. And I think it's an amazing point for us to end on because we've been going for 2 hours straight here. And I'm sure we both have better things to do or more important things. But I got to tell you, I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I think you and I think very similarly from a leadership standpoint
Yeah,
and passion. We're both very passionate leaders. We're in very different businesses, but I've really enjoyed this, and I've enjoyed getting to know your history and experience, what brought you to this, because you really, for whatever reason, just kind of dropped on my radar, very recently. And I'm shocked, like when I kind of see how far out your tentacles go, and some of the
yeah,
people in your network who I've come to find out are part of your network, and I've connected you to people, you've connected me to people. Yeah, I'm shocked that we haven't had a much longer, relationship together or whatever. But I'm glad to know you now, and yeah, good
I
luck with
appreciate it.
everything you're doing. I do love your expansion plans, and if I can ever help with anything, certainly reach out. And how
I
can people reach you? What's the best way?
So I mean, ultimately, there's the normal stuff. There's the Facebook. There's the Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm all Jordan Goodfellow,
Yeah,
GigRent. And then they can absolutely email me, jordan@gigrent.com. That's
perfect.
my email address. That comes straight to me. So I see every single email that comes in. I take care of every single one.
Good for you.
And I respond to everybody. There's not like, if I don't respond, just email me again, because it probably got lost in the 150 emails that came in since the moment I saw it. So
Yeah.
just be aware of that. But
I have come to learn that you're actually very responsive. So I would disagree with that last
well,
statement. But
I appreciate it.
yeah,
I absolutely do my best to stay on top of it. What
yeah,
I have done is I've learned how to filter. Like, I only focus on one, because I've got a couple of different email groups. You have the Rare
yeah,
Experience, I have GigRent, I have all. So like, if I'm looking at something, I'll only look at GigRent, and like
yeah,
that's the daytime thing, and then
yeah.
I'll look at everything else later, so
That's
that I
good.
can stay focused only on what is most important at the time.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your week, my friend.
You too. Thank you, dude.
All
Thank
right.
you. Appreciate it. Have a great afternoon.
And you.